Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome to the latest and greatest episode of the Black People Parenting Podcast. Of course, you know me, Dion the Glad Dad, and once a month we have these conversations about health and wellness, particularly around the topic of HIV and sexual health and how we can have conversations about the HIV and AIDS epidemic and what we can do to speak to our young people about making responsible sexual health decisions. So, on the show today, we have, of course, Dr. Bam Gaddis, who is coming to us live from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Sheboing, boing, boing. And we also have Shantae Hargrove. Shantae is a sexual health educator who works in a school system here in North Carolina, and she is someone who works with juniors and seniors in high school and also within the community to help the young people in the community get educated on STDs, STIs, sexual health, how those things can be prevented. So we wanted to come on, have a conversation with Tay so she can kind of kick some knowledge on what's going on with these young folks. Dr. Gaddis, welcome. Anything from you before we begin, ma'am?
I just want to make sure I lift up the HIV Clinical Trials Network. Mr. Chavis and I have been working with them for a number of years now. Our mission is actually around faith communities. I am a faith ambassador. Mr. Chavis serves as a faith consultant. And so outside of what we work to do to advance science-based conversations, making sure people have access to correct science-based information so that we can decrease misinformation and disinformation. Our mission is also looking for avenues to spread the news about good health. And so this is an intersectional conversation, and I'm just glad that we have some boots on the ground providers of sexual health on tonight. And so part of our mission at the HIV Clinical Trials Network is to make sure that we talk to the right people so they can get out the right messages. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for that, ma'am. So, Shantae, let's dive right in. I want to talk about, we're living in a climate where we're seeing that a lot of schools are being pressured to not have conversations about sex and not have conversations about sexual health with our young folks. I want you to tell me, based on your opinion, why you think it's important to start having these conversations about sexual education and sexual health early on. I personally think it should start before, being juniors and seniors, but why do you think it's important to start having these conversations with our young people?
I think it's important because they are, I hate to say, but a large number of the new HIV cases that we are seeing in our most recent data. So for an example, our most recent data that I've been able to find is from 2022, and for our county alone, and I'm in Henderson, North Carolina, or Vance County, North Carolina, the age group of 15 to 19 had 891 new cases in 2022. So that's a large number of, I just look at that number and think about my students,
Time out real quick. Time out, Tay. So let me get this straight. 890 cases of HIV in Henderson County alone between the ages of 15 and 19.
So let me make sure we right. So is that does the data say these are cumulative? That means that in the year of 2022 versus the total number of young people 15 to 19 that are living with HIV.
And I'm sorry, I have a correction on that. So these are gonorrhea infections, and then I thought for the HIV, I don't have the number right here in front of me, but it was over 25 new cases. 2022.
Okay, but still, let's not minimize that. 850 cases of gonorrhea is still a crazy number. Especially for Vance County and Henderson, that's not a large area. It ain't a whole lot of people there. So 850 cases of gonorrhea is still that's still wild. But go ahead, say. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
And
interrupt.
that's
I just wanted to be sure we had that.
no, you are fine. And that is a cumulative number between males and females in North Carolina in that age range.
Right, right. So
And then from
you're
there it
basically
goes from
saying that
20
the
to 24.
so young people are being infected at a high rate of whether we're talking HIV, whether we're talking other STIs, STDs, they are being infected at a very high rate. What do you think are some of the most common misconceptions that teenagers have about STDs and STIs?
Can I, before Ms. Hargrove, before you
I,
respond to that question, let me clarify some language, because language is everything. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that in public health we try to begin doing is changing how we describe these events. And so a lot of times we still are using the term infected. What emotions the word infected creates is one typically of avoidance behavior. And so I just want to note that when we are describing the rate in which people acquire STDs, STIs, HIV, we want to continue to be mindful of how we say what we say so that we don't redirect people to out of care or out of testing because they're afraid of what those words mean. And so I would encourage us to utilize terms like acquired, contracted
Got it.
versus infected.
Got it. Say less. I got you. I'm on it. I stand corrected. So, go ahead. Tell us some of the most common misconceptions that you are seeing amongst the young people.
Honestly, a big thing is trust in their partners. My partner wouldn't do this. They aren't having sex with anybody else, even though they aren't asking these questions. It's like a lot of assumptions. Also, how you can become infected with, I'm sorry, how you can contract certain infections. And I like to say infections. To use it kind of broadly, again, to not cause like so much stigma, but
Mm-hmm.
misconception about how these things are contracted is a big thing too. A lot of the students, and I say students because that's who I work with, but young people don't understand that diseases that you or infections that you can contract in the genitalia, you can also contract in the mouth. And anus even. That's another thing that they are not aware. That's like, oh, what? When they, are in my
Mm-hmm.
class and I'm like, yeah. And explaining those things and, all three of those types of sex can lead to a STI or STD.
Because a lot of the young people don't believe that oral sex is actually sex. That's
Right,
they
right.
don't
And they
consider
definitely
that
don't believe you can
as
get a STD.
right.
Repeat.
Um,
What did you just say, Ms. Hargrove? What was your last statement?
They don't believe that they can contract STI or STD from oral sex.
so what are you doing, or what do you do in your work, Ashante, to kind of change those thoughts that they're having, to kind of correct those misconceptions?
Honestly, the biggest thing is information. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I love how Dr. Gaddis said that about correcting misinformation and disinformation because there's so much out there, even the things that they think can cause them to contract STI or STD, especially when we talk about HIV. I've heard like, oh, if I cut my hand and somebody else has a cut on their hand and we put our hands together, HIV has just formed. And it's like, no, that's not true. But somebody has told them that. And again, I have juniors and seniors. So they've been believing this information up until they've gotten to me. And a big part of it is because sometimes for some of these students or youth, it's their first time having these conversations with an adult that actually knows accurate information. A lot of it's coming from family or friends, or they say like older people in their lives that they just know informally, like from around the neighborhood or in passing or something like that, because they're comfortable or they are the ones that's talking to them about it.
So speaking of like the older folks, what role do the parents play? Like, do you find that the parents are having these conversations? Like, are the parents trying to correct this? Like where are the parents coming in all of this? And are there any, is there ever any pushback that you're getting from parents on teaching this kind of stuff?
So thankfully, I do not get much pushback. They do have my class is an elective class, so they do have to have permission from a parent or guardian per the North Carolina Parent Bill of Rights. They have to have permission from a parent or guardian to be able to even take my class. So the parent or guardian knows from the beginning what we're going to be talking about, how detailed we'll get, and they have to give that permission to ask for them to participate in the class. So they give that permission. And then we also have homework that we often send it home to engage parents in the conversation. So it's literally like, hey, this is what we talked about today. If anything that you would like to add to this to let your child know, can you have a conversation with them, sign this and let us know let me know how it went. And I get so many responses based off of like that homework from, and it's a spectrum, right? So we have some parents who are totally comfortable and they have good conversations, they sign it, they don't have any complaints, any problems, all the way to I have parents who are like, why does she keep sending home stuff for me to do when this your class? And then parents who literally are honest on sometimes on the paperwork and saying, I didn't have these conversations growing up, I didn't know anything about this until I became grown, or I learned from my friends, or things like that. So parents, it's not a one size fits all for the parents. Honestly, I have all different types of parents, but none of them have been giving me pushback like, oh, I don't want you to talk to my student about this. And I'm sure that parents that felt that way just didn't allow their students to take the class, because I've had that where certain students are enrolled and then I go in class one day and they're no longer enrolled in the class. So I'm pretty sure that if they don't agree, they don't sign the paperwork.
What's the racial makeup of the majority of your students in your high school?
Did you the high school? You said racial?
Yes. What's your racial breakdown of the students in your particular high school?
Honestly, it's mostly Black and Hispanic or Latino students.
Well,
Dr. G, you had some.
Oh, you go ahead.
I'm not leading to your question. No, I'm just leading to your question. Go ahead.
Well, I asked because as we continue to look nationally, and especially in the South, at the percentage of new infections and the prevalence of people who've been living with HIV and who are contracting other sexually transmitted infections, we see this disproportionate representation from Black folks and people of color. And so I just was reflecting on the continuum of reactions from your parents. I wonder, do they know these statistics? When they say I never talked about it with my mama or my grandmama, whoever, how do we get them these statistics so they can see your why? This is why I'm been charged with teaching your children. These are the numbers that we're trying to combat by educating young people. So in your school district, how do you, beyond the homework, and I praise you for the homework, because I just don't think that's a standard process that a lot of teachers take advantage of, sending the kid home with homework with the expectation that they'll engage with their parent or guardian. So I want to applaud you for that. But how do you get the numbers to the parents so they understand why you're doing this in the first place?
Honestly, I do work for the health department here it's a district health department, so it's Granville and Vance counties. But we do see higher prevalences of HIV specifically for Vance County. So we do what's called a community health assessment every 3 years, where we are literally reporting all of the health concerns of the community, and we prioritize three major areas based off of the response we get from the community, and then we share that information to countywide, whoever would take it. We give it to, but it is a thicker pamphlet or like book, because it's not only STIs and STDs, but everything that's a health concern in the both counties. So we share that, but honestly, how many people are actually reading it, I couldn't tell you, to be honest.
So you're an employee of the health department, not of the school district.
Yeah, I'm an employee of the health department, and we have a contract with Vance County schools that says that, even if I were to quit today, this program is to keep going on every year at Vance County High School until there's a contract that says that it ends, because the Vance County schools sees the importance of this curriculum, and they even don't give me pushback, or of course I submit my curriculum to them, so they know exactly what the lesson is that I'm teaching to the students. But other than that, they don't say, oh, don't say this. I partner with a lot of other states and organizations. Like this summer, I don't know if you're familiar with Fat Forward, their Summer Institute.
I know who they
in
are.
South Carolina. They are awesome. And so much stuff that, we're the Carolinas, but South Carolina can't say certain words or do certain things with youth that we can. And it's just, amazing. Like, oh my goodness. And they have to find workarounds, but I don't have any of that. Like, I can say abortion, I can say contraceptives, I can say birth control. And they don't give me any problems. Only thing I can't do is provide condoms on school grounds. And that's a North Carolina law, which is counterproductive because I'm also telling them you
direct them to courses. Can you can't provide them, but can you direct the student to where resources lie?
Yes, ma'am. So because we are a district health department, or because I work for the health department, I'm able to take them on a field trip. Matter of fact, our field trip is next for this class. It's going to be next Friday. And I take them on a field trip to the health department so they can see where it's located. They can get the condoms while they're there. They can also be seen for services for reproductive or sexual health as long as they're over the age of 12. So at those types of events, I really try to just like give them as much as I can, because I wish it could be more often. But that's like a workaround. Also telling them, hey, if you need condoms, if you need dental dams, even it has extended to hygiene products, because students brought that to my attention. Hey, I can come and get condoms for free, but it's nowhere I can go to get menstrual products. It's nowhere I can go if I need a toothbrush, if I need body wash, So we even have hygiene products for our young people also through the health department. So we're trying to like find workarounds.
Do you educate them about PrEP? Is that in your curriculum?
Yes, PrEP and PEP. Yes, both PrEP and PEP are included in the curriculum.
I'm totally amazed, especially with the field trip.
Let me stop for a minute. Let's pause for the cause for a minute, because I want, for the parents who may not understand what PrEP and PEP are, Dr. G, I always like to say the thing and make it simple for those who might not know. So in layman's terms, tell the good people what PrEP and PEP are.
Theoretically, PrEP, as they've seen on television but didn't know who it was for, is pre-exposure prophylaxis. The technical drug name is Truvada. You can only,
what they do.
PrEP is a 1 pill a day regimen that allows someone who's trying not to contract HIV only can take this one pill a day, and they can significantly, like in the 90 percentile, reduce their risk if taken correctly from contracting HIV. PEP, on the other hand, stands for post-exposure prophylaxis, and it is something that you may see go into play with let's say you have a doctor or a nurse who has an accidental stick, or someone who's been sexually assaulted, or someone who, after having unprotected sexual relations, finds out they've been exposed to HIV. They can potentially be candidates for PEP, which means within 72 hours of the exposure, they can get what we call prophylaxis or PEP, and it will, in a very significant way, reduce the chances that they will contract HIV from those exposures. Finally, you cannot take PrEP unless they confirm that you are HIV negative. You cannot take PrEP unless they can know that you are not positive, because to take PrEP and have an HIV diagnosis means that you are going to create an environment within the body that will make you what we call resistant to therapy. So you got to have a negative test to take PrEP, and they will test you before they administer PEP.
Okay. So
was that right, Ms.
those,
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
she thinks she know everything, Shantae. Don't she thinks she know everything. But when it comes to this, she does. She does know everything. She does.
I can tell by the way she was nodding.
She does.
She knows exactly what I'm talking about.
She does know everything. That's why I keep her around, Shantae. That's why I keep Dr. Gaddis around, because she actually does know every single thing there is to know about life.
Resource.
She really is. That's why I keep her around. That's why I keep her here. So I want to talk about the emotional portion of talking about sexual relations with young people, because a lot of times young folks don't equate the emotions that come with it. So in your curriculum, Shantae, or even in, maybe not even in your curriculum, but just in the work that you do, how do you correlate the emotional portion that comes with being intimate with someone to the physical portion? Because again, as young people, their brains still aren't developed. How do you kind of work in almost a social emotional learning aspect of sexual health?
Honestly, another thing I loved about what Dr. Gaddis said about needing this curriculum sooner, I completely agree. My curriculum is actually K through 12. I didn't say that before.
Mm-hmm.
So it literally goes through those social emotional learning things, like just how to be a friend, right? So even though it's K through 12, I literally do all of the lessons with my students. So it starts off very light, like color me a picture of your family, like different things like that. So let them see, hey, families look different, right? Everybody's family not the same. Everybody's family doesn't have the same type of relationships. Like everybody might not have a mommy and a daddy, right? But does that mean that they are less than, or different things like that? Like teaching them the very basics of what we're going to get to, how to be a good friend, right? How to be respectful, to respect somebody else. And it literally leads from those like simple or more less complicated ideas to understand for them, no matter like where they are. Because in public health, we know that we need to start off with really 4th grade level with most people with their literacy, right? So just starting really basic and having those things for them to think about, and then leading to more complicated concepts and ideas. For an example, right now we are talking about unhealthy relationships, or we've been talking about unhealthy relationships, and then today we moved a transition to where first healthy, unhealthy, now abusive, to show so it's not like, oh, where is this coming from? It's like a slow progression, so they are aware of. And I tell them, we're going to get deeper into this because they think like at first when we're talking about it that I'm just like it doesn't relate, to be honest. They're like, okay, you're talking to us about friends because you want us all to get along. And I'm like, I would love for you all to get along, but it's so you understand. If you can understand how to be a good friend, you can understand how to be a good partner in a romantic relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
literally,
Mm-hmm.
kind of some things people assume, oh, they're juniors and seniors, so they know all of that stuff. You can skip it and you don't have to talk about it, but we do talk about it to make sure like we're all on the same page.
We are grown folks who don't know how those concepts. I would sign up for your class.
Right.
I'm guessing they running to get in your class. Is
I
that true?
hope. I hope. I
You
do
hope.
have a limit on my class, but because of the popularity of it that it's been getting, because honestly I've been doing this is my 6th year doing it. January makes 7 years. I've had as little as 7 students in the class, and now I have over 20. So I'm going to have a second class next semester where it's going to be probably like 25 students in each class, which is still only a drop in the bucket. But also I am going to be able to go to the elementary school to do those social emotional lessons that we're talking about, even like
Mm-hmm.
bullying. Again, if somebody's a bully in a friendship or amongst their peers, this person could potentially be a bully in their romantic relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
again, just talking about all those things that seem small and incorporating and let them know how this relates when you get grown. And some of these things are concepts. Even I have 3 boys. I'm constantly telling my 2 older boys, because the younger one's a baby, but I'm constantly telling them like, small lessons that right now it seems like, okay, mommy is just overreacting. When I say if somebody says stop touching them or not to touch them, you stop. You don't touch them. So that seems, and I take it so serious. And it seems like, oh my goodness, she's making a big deal out of nothing, even with each other. But then when they get older and they're in a romantic relationship and somebody says stop or no, you can't touch me, they'll take that serious because they will know or think like, hey, I grew up like this. My mom told me the same thing, like just to respect people in general.
Where does your
And
curriculum come from?
It's Advocates for Youth. I don't know if
Oh,
you heard of them, but it's
do
the curriculum is 3 R's, which is rights, respect, and
right?
responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's a free
and
curriculum. I love it. I love it. Even we even go into like sex trafficking and human trafficking. Um, so again, it's very, very broad, a very broad curriculum and much needed information.
let me say this. Shantae touched on the fact that she has 3 boys, and I think that it's important to say that a lot of the young people in our communities, they don't get a chance to see what healthy relationships look like, right? A lot of them, I have this Black Love shirt on today. A lot of our young people don't get a chance to see what Black love looks like, right? And I will say this, and I will commend Shantae. And like I said, I've known her husband for years now. Uh, the Hargroves are an example of Black love, and they're an example of, um, you know, exuding what a positive male and woman figure look like, a mom and a dad and the sons. And I think that having somebody who actually talks to talk, right? Like she ain't just up here just pulling our strings. Like she actually lives this life for real. Like she is someone who I've actually watched their family grow from social media. And I think it makes a difference when you have somebody teaching this type of topic who really cares about the topic, who really lives the life that they're teaching about. But what I wanted to ask Shantae is that, so let's say we have parents who aren't, and I'll say parental figures, right? Because it could be parents, it could be aunts, uncles, it could be whoever, it could be pastors who want to start having these conversations, but they don't know how to approach having these conversations with the young people. What are some suggestions that you would have, especially in this climate that we're in, where where this political climate that we're in, where, it, like you said, you can't say certain things in certain states if you are of this particular, if you hold this position. What are some tools or some tips that you would give for folks to start broaching these types of conversations with young people?
Now for parents or guardians, it's easier, I would say, because they don't have to worry about like the legal stipulations attached to
Hmm.
talking to their young person about these topics. So you'd be surprised how many young people want this information. We have a thing we do in class where we ask, what's something if you could talk to your parent or guardian, judgment free about what we talk about in class. What are some things that you would want to know about them or that you would them to talk to you about? And a lot of them like want to know literally their parents' sexual experiences, like not
Mm.
to the point where like detailed, but like the age that they first had sex. Were they in love when they had sex? Was it ever a time they had sex and regretted it? They want to know that their parent is a person that has been a young person and that they want to talk about it. So if we are hesitant to talk about it, or we are scared or nervous or avoiding talking about certain things,
Or
they pick up on that and they don't talk to their parents
lying,
because they comfortable.
or lying.
Or lying, right,
Yes,
right, right.
yes. That's another. Oh, I never had sex before I had you, right? And it's like, okay, well, I can't relate, because I have feelings now that I want to address. I need to talk to somebody about, but they want to talk to their parents or guardians specifically, but they don't want it to be awkward. They don't want to have consequence come behind it. I grew up, and that's the biggest thing. My biggest motivator. I try to be who I didn't have growing up. My mom was super open. She showed me everything. She explained everything to me, but I was uncomfortable talking to her because I genuinely thought if I talk to her and tell her I'm doing these things or I'm interested in these things, she's going to stop me from going out with these people I'm telling her I'm interested in. She's going to not let me hang out with my friends because she's going to think I'm influenced by them. It's like the consequence that comes along with having these conversations is what I literally was scared of. And that's a lot of these young people. They're scared of being judged. Why are you thinking about that? You shouldn't be thinking about that. You definitely shouldn't be doing that. And that was something that I grew up too. You weren't asking, you weren't thinking about it. And it's like some people think that students ask kind of like for permission. Like we talk about it and I'm okay. Well, I give them advice. It's like giving them permission to have sex. And it's not true. Most of my students who know so much of the information, because I always ask like before we go over any information just to see where they are, because sometimes I don't have to explain certain things that they already know. So I ask like, how many of you know what a STD is, what a STI is, different things. And the main ones that know the answers to those questions, and I don't ask them to tell me, but they will voluntarily say that they've never engaged in a sexual intercourse. So, but they know the information. They are most knowledgeable. And the ones who they come in the classroom because at first my classroom had a negative connotation, like, oh, this is a freaky class. This is a class you talk about freaky stuff in. So they be like, come in, oh, I know everything. I can teach you some things. Those ones that are like kind of boasting about being sexually active, by the end of the class, they're like, I'm scared. You got me scared. I don't want to do nothing. It's like, it's not to scare you. It's so you can know, so you can protect yourself while you're doing the things that you want to do. Hopefully nobody's pressuring you to do these things. It's because you want to do them, because you know how to be safe, doing them. A lot of them are doing things to find out.
So we are HIV clinical trial faith ambassadors, consultants. I wonder, as you talk about the methodical way this information is given to you across from the psychosocial, behavioral, attitude, belief kind of framework, what would it look like if this was in a church? What would it look like, do you think, if that curriculum that you're using, if you had some trained folks in a church who were teaching the exact same curriculum that you're advocates for youth, that framework. Do you see that working? Do you see churches being in a significant role to be to get to, so they have so many young people in their church? What do you think about the church taking on this through their health ministry?
I think it'll be awesome. Also, this is something that kind of like, I am a Christian, and I'm gonna be honest. When I first started in this profession, I had almost like culture shock because so much stuff that I was taught growing up about, not having sex, not masturbating, different things like that. We kind of encouraged because from a health perspective, it's no risk attached to it versus intercourse with another person. And that's something religiously was like, no, you don't touch it. It's none of that until marriage. And so that's like a conflicting thing. Even I have been called out to do presentations at churches, and I have been given strict instructions to only talk about healthy and unhealthy relationships, or like they give me certain topics that they want me to cover, and you'd be surprised how many teens would ask questions that still like supposed to talk to you about that, but I want to answer your question. So I really think it depends on the church or the leader.
Do you go to those
Like how
churches?
open they would be.
For the churches that try to tell you exactly what you can and cannot talk about, do you actually go to those churches and work under those restrictions, or how do you deal with that?
Yes, I do, because I love young people, and I just feel like most of the time when they ask me to come out, it's because they've either had an incident, like something happened, like a teen or young person was caught or got pregnant, and so they want somebody to come and talk. Or the teens are asking questions about it, so they're like, okay, well, we want you to have this information, so we're going to get somebody to come in and talk to you all. So I'll go because I want to give them the information, and honestly, I try to answer their questions and give them information in a way that is acceptable to the leadership, because they are listening usually when I go like that. And
They're
even if it's like on the other side of a curtain.
So we talk about the intersection of religion and sexual health on this podcast a lot. So Tay, let me ask you, as someone who was raised, one, you said you're raised a Christian. I know that because you just said it. And as someone who was raising two boys, I know how hard it can be to raise a boy. I have a 6-year-old myself. How are you balancing the old timing church teaching that you got with this newer approach to being more educated on and more open about sexual health? Like how are you balancing that? Because a lot of times we bring our background and our upbringing with us, and those stuff be hard to break. So I want to know, like, how are you finding it that you can manage the two?
Honestly, I'm super, super comfortable like with what I teach and what I talk about. I absolutely love it. And anybody that will listen, I'll talk to them about it. And honestly, just yesterday I was talking to um a preacher's wife at the school, and she was saying about how like she gets a lot of backlash from um encouraging sexual health education and encouraging like condom use and different things like that, even though she also believes in don't have sex before marriage. And my way of like balancing it, one, I've been doing this for a little while now, so I'm definitely have been able to let go of some of those biases that I didn't even realize I had until I got in the classroom. And again, being hesitant to say certain words or certain things, they pick up on that. So my biggest thing is I'm sex positive. My job is not to try to control anybody's body, not to try to control what
For sure.
anybody does, and to assume unless you decide to not have sex, at some point in your life, you need this information to know what to do. For an example, even, I've been told all my life, you don't have sex, all this stuff. And then soon, I've only been married for 2 years now. As soon as I got married, everybody, y'all gonna have another baby? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? You make sure you're taking care of him and you're doing these things. It's like, okay, but when was I supposed to learn these things? Had I never engaged in sex before I got married? And I don't ask them that question, but it's just like a weird concept of no, 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 no. Then when you get married, it's like this green light turns on, this information just starts flowing to your brain. And it doesn't work like that. You need somebody to talk to you, somebody to let you know certain things, how things work. So that's my outlook on it. I don't want to stop my students, any young person I talk to, including my kids. My goal is not to make sure that they don't have sex. And honestly, that's some parents' agenda. As long as I can go without my child having sex as possible, I've been successful. If I can go as long as, 30 years or whatever that deadline is, then I've succeeded. I don't want my children to not have sex. I want them to have regret-free sex, right? Like they have sex, but they don't regret. They don't like, oh my, I can't believe I did.
Responsible, protected,
Yes, yes,
supportive.
yes,
But
yes.
you tell back to what Deanna was talking about, and you just talked about men. I was talking to a colleague just today, and in preparation for tonight, I asked him some very specific questions, and he started to share with me about what his experience was as a 19-year-old virgin whose first introduction to sexual activity was from a woman twice his age, who introduced him to all of these things that his same age colleagues, his same age girls knew nothing about. And in a way, as he talked about it, it sounded traumatic. And I said, he talks vividly about what it was like to be exposed to that in a virgin space, to be in love for that one sexual act with someone twice your age turned into something of love, which for them was a fling, which for them was insignificant, which for them, he was like a boy toy. But to him, being his first experience, when it came down to what was real and he realized he was being used, right? How devastated he was. And I don't think we talk about women frequently, about older men. We talk about the first sexual experience of women, but rarely do we give any attention to protecting boys, especially now with the young men, I should say, who are being basically introduced to things way beyond their years and then are left to figure it out. And so, assuming he was someone who people assumed he had already had sex, he talked about making pretend that he was knowledgeable with this person when he knew he had never had sex in his life, and the things that were introduced to him were way over his head. And so I think that what you're doing is vital to protecting the psyche, not just the physical being, but the psyches of our women and our boys, so that they're not used as sex objects by people who don't have their best interest in mind. And that is not just about women, it's about men as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hate to say it, but I'm not surprised to hear that. I'm not surprised to hear that. I hear that kind of often. I don't get now I will say the more guys that take the class at one time, the more will take it. But if it's like, not many guys, then the guys will kind of like shift away from it. And that's one thing I wish I could have a male partner to get the male perspective so I can be able to have somebody that relates to them better. But with the guys that I have had as students, I often hear that like we're like, oh well, because we talk about the concept of virginity, right? People assume a virgin is somebody who's never engaged in oral, vaginal, or anal sex, but we know that that's not true. Like Dion said, some people literally believe oral sex is not sex. Some people believe if I have anal sex, I'm still protecting my virginity for my religion. So I can do those things and I'm still a virgin, but it's risk associated with those activities and they aren't thinking about those things. So you'll have people, we talk about the concept of virginity and some of the guys will say that like, oh yeah, I just wanted to get rid of it. Like it's so insignificant for males. And then we talk about, well, hey, how does that a different message for females, right? They say like call it body count for people that you slept with. And they're like, females, if they're virgins, that's a good thing. You want a female to have a low body count. But for a male, that's a bad thing. I'm inexperienced, that means that they're going to go be with somebody that's better. And that's what they believe. So it's like a burden to keep their virginity. And so they have shared like, oh yeah, we know if I wanted to lose my virginity right now or somebody wants to, where you can go and do it. And with, like you said, the older woman in their community. And it's sad.
That I want mine back. Give me mine back. I'm let me start from scratch. Let me
It wasn't even good the first time. It was horrible. It was like, oh, is this it? Is it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind taking it back. Like let me get it back for a little bit. Just for a little bit. Just for a couple of days. Like let me see what it's like to not live this life that I've lived for 44 years. So we talked a little bit about consent. And I want to touch on what we've been seeing in the news lately with Sean Combs and now the guy from Abercrombie and Fitch is facing some sexual battery charges, I believe. How have the things that have been going on, or have the things that have been going on in the news lately, affected the outlook or the way that you approach talking about consent? Because I think, Dr. G, we talked about this the last time. Consent now is totally different. Like it has a different meaning, a different connotation than it did 25, 30 years ago. How has that changed, Shantae, and how has that changed the way that you have these conversations with these young people?
Honestly, you'd be surprised that the biggest thing that comes up, or you may be not surprised, but right now is the Diddy situation, right? So, looking at that, and they're like, it's an array of responses all the way from, yes, that's wrong. He shouldn't do those things. I believe those people in general, because we know it's not just women. But I believe those people all the way down to he has all this money. Why would he need to do that? He could have anybody he wants. They just want to be paid. So it's even still skewed, a skewed concept of even if, because we always talk about like consent is an enthusiastic yes, right? Like yes, when, where, you ready?
For sure.
Like it's not, yeah, okay, sure. Like those things, how can consent happen? Even not saying anything at all is not consent. I've heard that growing up. Oh, well, they didn't say no. So,
Right.
and letting them know that's not consent. Consent needs to be and actively present. That's another thing too. Young people text and FaceTime, and they don't understand if somebody agreed to something over the phone. When you get in front of that person, that does not count as consent legally. I know in North Carolina anyway, does not constitute consent. You cannot say, I have the text message showing that this person said that we could have sex. And then when we got together, they said that they didn't want to have sex. So like it has to be in the moment, it has to be constant, and it has to be, again, excited or enthusiastic, like they really really want to. They aren't being pressured or coerced. And coercion or peer pressure, and I can even say just coercion period, because sometimes it's not their peers who are pressuring them to do things. I know I had one student one year, she kind of glorified having a grown man as her man and picking her up and different
Mm,
things like that. So really empowering them to do you really want to do this? Understanding the dynamics of power and control. Even the money situation, like I don't know, it's very popular about $40 for sexual um acts, and letting them know that is prostitution. Trading
mm-hmm.
sexual behaviors for money is prostitution. You're trying to minimize it, but that you're not doing it because you want to, because you have these urges, because you care about this person. You're doing it for what you're going to get, and that's not true consent. So just
Nails
talking about all those different things with
done,
them.
yeah, getting your nails done, getting your hair weave hooked up, all of those things as trade. That's a term
Yes.
people use for trading one thing for another. To your point, when we look at health risk, is that trading going to be worth something you can't get rid of?
Mm,
The other thing we try to tell, young man, I used to say to young men who I'd say, okay, as a 37-year-old woman, and you're 19, 20, what could I possibly have in common with you? Other than sex,
Right.
what could I possibly
Right.
intellectually, spiritually, whatever the case may be? I have no use for, with all due respect to you, you're a handsome person, you appear to be correct in so many ways, using a strength-based model. But for real, we don't have anything in common. And all I'm going to do is use you, or you, even though you'll think you're using
Or you
me,
use
or you're using me,
exactly, exactly.
but at the end of the day, we're going nowhere. And so, I call upon these older adults, back to your question, Dion, about how are students responding to the conversation around Diddy. This has been going on since the beginning of time. The issue is now it's coming out.
mm-hmm.
These things have been occurring. The coercion and the sexual assault and all of these things to try to get people's career opportunities have been going on. We're just at the beginnings of seeing what names come up
Mm.
in this whole
I want
thing.
I want to pivot just a little bit, but not really a complete pivot, because Shantae, you are someone who can speak to something that I've wanted to talk about on this show for a while, but we haven't had anyone qualified to do so. So I want to talk about sex trafficking just a little bit, because that is also a topic that you teach, and you talk to these young people about. And I don't think that as a whole we realize how real and serious sex trafficking is. It wasn't until maybe the last couple of years that I even knew that it was like a real thing, even here in the state of North Carolina. So I want you to kind of unpack a little bit the seriousness of what sex trafficking is and what it looks like, because it doesn't look like what people probably would think that it looks like, right? So just kind of give some insight into what sex trafficking in 2024 is and what it looks like.
Yes, definitely. So, sex trafficking can be a array of things, but going back to what we talked about, like exchanging benefits for sexual acts or behaviors, and usually with sex trafficking, one person is paid, or they've received some type of benefit for allowing somebody to have sex with another person. And it's never, or let me say hardly ever, a stranger. That's the misconception, like, oh, somebody's going to drive up in a van and grab me and kidnap
The white
me and
van,
sex traffic
the white
me.
van.
That's a small portion of people who are just getting like snatched up or kidnapped. It starts off, it could be, and that's the other thing, good thing about being in the school. You'll be surprised how many or any relationship with young people. Some people get into these certain jobs or professions to get close to, I hate to say it, but like their prey or their victims, you know. So it could be a coach, it could be a teacher, it could even be a principal, it could be a pastor, you know, it can be anybody that is in your life saying that they mean you well, gaining your trust, and then eventually take advantage of you and allow other people to take advantage of you for their own benefit. And we talked to them about how it's over $1 billion industry, even how they've been incorporating older people, elder people into luring people in because they're trustworthy. So it's nobody that you can say, oh, they would never do that, because you don't know. It's so broad. Even it could be just taking somebody, oh, I'm going to take you home, and they don't take you home, they take you to their house, and they could drug them, like do something to them. And that's another thing, a lot of young people don't believe in like date rape drugs and different things like that, but they do still exist, and people do still use those things, and then keep that person there for however long and allow multiple people to have sex with them or do sexual things to them before they're able to leave or be let go. Or they're providing housing for somebody, right? Like, oh, you can come live with me, you can stay with me, I'll take you to school, I'll take you to the doctor, I'll take you wherever you need to go. And it seems like an awesome thing at first. I don't have anywhere else to go, or I don't want to be at home. And then they start asking, hey, can you do some, some type of sexual act with me, or can we do something? I'm letting you live here, I'm doing this for you, I'm doing that for you. And then it can trickle down to what you did with me, I'm going to have somebody else come over here, and you're going to do the same thing with them. And I'm going to give you something, right? Like, that new bag.
You don't have to pay rent this month.
Like, Miss Dr. Gaddis. Right. Those different things where they feel obligated or stuck, in those situations.
Dr. Gaddis, you want to add anything to that?
I think that's another topic for another day.
I've been wanting to talk about sex trafficking on the show for a while. I just haven't had anyone who was qualified to have the conversation with. So I think we need to kind of put a pin in that and come back to it for another episode. But I think it's definitely something that we need to discuss, because it is something that is going on right under our noses. And
I don't go to any airport. There's no airport that I've been in recently that doesn't have something in the women's bathroom that lets women know that if you're being trafficked, that what you should do to address it. Why you're in that bathroom.
They don't really have them in the men's bathroom, but I did see that.
Everything.
Say that again.
It's not a lot of this is a scary thing. It's not a lot of young people that I know are really taking flights or traveling like that often. So honestly, some of them, it's our class is their first time even hearing about it, or hearing about it to know what it means outside of like the news or like social media talking about it.
Which takes me back, because I know we're coming up to the hour, which takes me back, which is why I'm interested in maybe having a second part of this conversation, Dion, about the church. I can't tell you how many families in the church have dealt with daughters and sons who've been trafficked, who've been stolen. Now, right this minute, there is a young man who was in Hamilton, who was in the cast of Hamilton. And his mother, although he's older, they have no idea where he is. Wow. They haven't seen him in weeks, and they have made all kinds of public appeals for anyone to give them information. And so right in the pews of our churches are parents who are in complete turmoil and pain because their kids are gone, don't know where they are, hooked up with somebody on the internet, befriended them, as well as what you talk about, Ms. Hargrove, about being used by someone they thought they knew. And so it's just amazing. And as a person who has great grands, a young, beautiful young child, female, and it's not just females, it's the males too. They're stealing males as well. We need to get with it as a community and stop acting like this stuff isn't happening. And so I think to bring this back to the fore at another time is something that we're obligated to do.
For sure. Well, I thank you, ladies. We are at 1 hour. This has been another excellent conversation. Shantae, any last words of wisdom, because you've shed a lot of light, dropped a lot of jewels today? Anything that you want to say to close us out?
I just want to thank everybody so much for tuning in, and hopefully if you are watching this, then you already have an open mind. And if a young person tries to talk to you or come to you with something, a lot of things they like to say is, oh, I have a friend who is going through this and this. Open up and talk to them, and don't try not to be defensive. Where your friends should, y'all don't need to be talking about, let's try to really listen to understand and hear these young people out, because 9 times out of 10, they are trying to talk to somebody. So just be, supportive, and then listen here. They come to you.
Build a bridge, not a wall. That's what I always like to say.
I want to follow up with Mr. Chavis and with you. I'm very interested in talking more about the curriculum you're using. And how do we move into a place where we potentially could get funds to do like a TOT, do a training of trainers, where we could target health ministries within churches who have an interest in really addressing this issue of sexual health in a sex positive, responsible fashion, and do some of the work that we can't get done in the schools. Because certainly I know in South Carolina, it doesn't even come close to what you just described.
Let's put it together, Dr. G. Let's make it happen.
Okay.
Let's make some shake, All right. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you all. Probably it'll be.
I'm going to touch.
I can definitely get her in contact with who trains people in the curriculum. And even train me.
All right, cool. So I'll link y'all so y'all can connect and make that happen. In the meantime, in between time, we will see y'all later. Peace. Thank you.
Take care. Nice to meet you.